begin our webinar. Welcome to the PID webinar, 6th or 7th on energy. So let's see how we can begin. Welcome everybody. We have got a webinar, I think 6th or 7th. This time we are going to talk about energy innovations. I think I'll wait for the speakers to convince me that there is such a thing as an energy innovation in Pakistan, because quite frankly, I'm of the view that we can't innovate in anything, leave alone energy. So I think this is a challenge. Let the speakers convince us that we can have innovation in energy, and we will agree with that. So we got a wonderful panel for you, as you people have been here. We've got Ms. Amrina Malik, Renewable Energy Consultant, World Bank. We've got Dr. Sabah Beg, Head Energy Research Center, ComSats. We've got Amjad Awan, former CEO of AEDB. And then we've got Mehroz Rafiq, Senior Chief Officer of NEPRA. And Ahmed Durrani, President of ENERG, a former World Bank, and SHAHID SATTAR, ED Aptma, a former member energy and a well-known energy expert. You met these people before. Let me also say that this webinar is in conjunction with NEPRA. We thank NEPRA for partnering with us. NEPRA is always a good partner. They always allow for open discussion, which is a very good thing for a regulator to do. So my salute to NEPRA. We need more people to do this.
Sir, you really need to talk a bit louder, because I mean your voice is audible but not really audible, meaning the
really audible. Okay.
Volume.
Okay. Let me see if I can do anything about it. Let me check controls. See, just give me 1 second. Let me quickly see if there's something I can do at this end. Oh, no wonder. Is this better? Hello, is this better?
Much better.
Much better? Good. I think there was something wrong in the controls. Okay. Anyways, folks, so there we are. We will, inshallah, have a good webinar. Let's see if these people tell us about energy innovations. Amrina Malik, can I start with you since you have to go early? Can you tell us if there is any energy innovation possible in Pakistan, or are you just talking about the elsewhere, the rest of the world? Amrina Malik, please.
Assalamu alaikum, Nadeem Saab and the rest of the participants. And thank you, Nadeem Saab, for the opportunity to speak again during these energy webinars. Innovation is possible because energy innovation is a technology application. The state of the art globally is such that there has been significant innovation along the value chain of the power sector. And there are now technologies available from generation to transmission, distribution, and then also on the demand side or behind the meter that can digitize and automate the entire value chain of the power industry. And these technologies have now been around. Some have been around for several decades already. Most are market tested and ready to use as we speak. So on the generation side, innovation is in the types of fuel that we can use for energy production. Renewable energy is one example. And some renewables, such as solar and wind, have a significant foothold in Pakistan already, proving that deployment of these innovative technologies is possible even in a developing country setting with very little infrastructure in terms of service infrastructure to help or assist deploy these technologies. When the wind market first took shape in Pakistan nearly a decade and a half ago, there were very few companies locally that could provide services to the wind industry. So for instance, during the project development process, from legal services to financial services to technical services, And in the beginning, we depended mostly on importing services for renewables. However, the local industry ramped up fairly quickly, and we're now at a point where almost all the professional services are also available locally in Pakistan. And the only thing that we don't do enough of or at all is manufacture. Otherwise, almost every aspect of the supply, of the generation supply chain, we have a fairly good grip on as far as wind and solar are concerned. So that's an example of innovation on the generation side. On the transmission side, some of the cutting edge transmission technologies include smart wires, for instance, or metering infrastructure on distribution transformers. And these are also technologies that are already being deployed globally and are market tested. But it is a matter of resources rather than anything else. The transmission grid in Pakistan could easily adopt some of these technologies and could benefit from them. However, there is the issue of the cost of this particular kind of upgrade for the transmission network. On the distribution side, again, AMR and AMI is an established technology now that can find application in Pakistan as well. But then again, cost is a factor to consider. And then there are behind the meter technologies as well. For instance, the Internet of Things or the digitization of appliances, etc., that would enable demand response industries. So these are all examples of technologies that exist and can be deployed in Pakistan. However, as with all things that require an upfront capital expenditure, cost is a factor that I believe keeps the companies that are in the sector from adopting these technologies.
Ji, Armina, are you finished or are you still going?
No, that's my 2 bits.
Okay, great, wonderful. Thank you, Armina. That is wonderful. So there is possibility of energy innovation, basically, which is copying the rest of the world. Okay, fair enough. I'll accept that, but we'll go in a little further into that. So shall I bring in Mr. Amir Durrani here? Amir, go ahead. Amir? I could hear Amir fine, but now I can't seem to hear him. Amir, are you going to unmute? I don't think Amir can hear us. Can somebody please call him? Okay, Amjad Awan Saab. Amjad Awan Saab, former CEO, ADB.
Thank you very much, Saab. I think first of all, I will like to.
I'm sorry, I can hear you. Let Amjad go forward.
Okay.
Are you hearing me? Am I audible right now?
We can hear you, Amjad Saab. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Saab, first of all, I will be thankful enough for giving me this opportunity to speak on this very subject. And I appreciate PIDE and NAPRA for arranging this kind of seminar, because normally or conventionally, we talk about the supply and demand of energy, project management, financial issues, but we rarely touch upon this critical aspect of technology and innovation. And I believe this has a colossal impact on every aspect of energy trajectory in our country, be it business, be it cost reduction issues, be it the negative and positive externalities, and even the policies. And I believe that while we talk about innovation, it doesn't mean only the technological innovation, but it has a broad range of things. For example, the new and innovative business models, new kind of grid infrastructure, new kind of technologies, innovative kind of pitching your incentives for the investors, and how you are viewing the energy market in your country. So this all are the ingredients of the innovation along with the technological innovation in our country. So I think now we should understand that what is the our country's current track and business as usual where we are standing. So some of the figure, and you know it very well, that right now the circular debt surpasses 2 trillion rupees. And we are actually depending 70% of our energy dependence is on the imported and conventional thermal resources. Around 1132 billions are the receivables on the part of DISCOs. This is the situation. And we are right now in our country where the cost of energy, the tariff is 30-40% higher than our regional counterparts. And so we are the expensive actually tariff owners in this region. And then the losses, if you take in mind all the technical T&D commercial losses, the aggregate value surpasses 35%, highest in this region. And right now, the share of renewable in our country is hardly 4 to 5%, and we are getting benefit out of it. Only 1% of energy, wind and solar, that is being utilized despite the deployment of 4 to 5%. So this is the situation. And secondly, we must understand that why we are going and talking about energy innovation. There are certain considerations and market needs, market vacuums that we want to fill through this. The global motivation for any energy innovation or the cost is the environment and the energy security. These are the key considerations to go for energy innovations at global level. In our country, the situation is this, as I mentioned, there should be some key considerations. And the question is, if somebody asks why we should go for energy innovation, why we should avoid the business as usual, the current theme of the things. 3 or 4 key considerations that we should take in mind. The first, we are the resource constrained economy, and we should appreciate the cost reduction and cost disruptive trends. So all those technology which are going to reduce our cost of generation, transmission, distribution, we should go for this. Secondly, our heavy dependence on imports, we should avoid this. And third thing, the environmental consideration and now growing pressure on Pakistan to meet its environmental targets. These are the 3 considerations for that we should go for the energy innovations. So now, beyond these things, what are the global trends right now in terms of renewable energy? Some key themes I would like to mention in the world, for example, more positive response towards renewables. Now, world is shifting from the centralized energy management to the hybrid and off-grid management of things. EV, electrical vehicles, the new trend. Storage technologies, competitor technologies. These are the new things. In IOE, we often speak about Internet of Energy to employ energy management systems, a range of sensors, smart grid, so that your consumer must integrate the response through storage, through RE resources and grid appropriately. This is the growing trend in the country right now, in the world right now. So now, if you take in mind take into considerations the current RE approach in the world, it is, I think, startling. More than $2.7 trillion have been invested since 2010 to 2020 in renewable energy, excluding hydro, only in the geothermal, wind and solar, these kind of technologies. And the year 2019, previous year, more than 184 gigawatt of wind and solar were deployed in the world. 118 gigawatt was solar, and wind trailed with the 61 gigawatt. And offshore wind, as most people talk about, last year, $29.9 billion were invested in the offshore. And not talking about the developed country, but the developing economies are more rigorously following this track, with $152 trillion invested 2019, whereas the developed world only invested 130 billion. So the growing economies are going more towards renewable energy right now. And the cost reduction, more than 83% of cost reduction in solar has been witnessed since last 1 decade, and 51% in terms of offshore and onshore wind. And more than 78% of the new energy was installed through wind and solar in the world last year. So these are the global trends. In Pakistan, we are still staggering around 4 to 5% of renewable energy in our national grid. Whereas I think it's much required. We are only utilizing 1% share of the renewable energy in our grid connected systems. So this is the situation. And one thing I would like to add further, many people blame the policies, that policies are not appropriate in the country. But here the problem is manifold. The state ownership should be there. I don't think the proper state ownership is there to go for the energy innovations. Secondly, institutions are performances in front of us. Nobody is taking these changes along. And further to this, the institutional accountability, that's lacking. So all these factors right now are missing, which are stopping us from entering into more innovative trends and innovative processes in the country. So now, finally, what should Pakistan do? I mean, the most immediately, we should follow the global trends of decarbonizing the economy, because if we approach towards decarbonized economy, these are the cheapest resources available at our end. And these are the indigenously available resources at our end. So at the same time, we are achieving triple impact of indigenizing the economy, lowering the cost of generation, and a decentralized approach. This all is combined for the renewable energy right now. And further to this, its impact will be lowering the dependence on our import, and definitely we will be moving more rigorously into the regime of energy independence and energy security. Thank you very much.
Amjad Sahab, thank you very much. It's a wide-ranging sort of, you made a number of very interesting points. But let me just quickly ask you before I move on to the panel. ADB has been around since Bhutto's time, if I remember right.
Yes, you're right.
So if we did a sort of evaluation of ADB, what would you say? What has it contributed since Bhutto's time?
Thank you very much, Pradeep Sahab. You asked a very pertinent question, and let me tell you, ADB is functional since 2003, and almost 17 years. I joined.
I thought ADB was there in Bhutto's time.
No. It was in 2003. It was formed, and 2006 was the first year when we had a renewable energy policy in the country.
Okay.
And since 2003 to 2015, we had the footprint of only 264 megawatt combined solar energy. My tenure was actually 2015 to 2019. And during this phase, more than 1900 megawatt was deployed. We crossed 1 gigawatt of deployed, connected wind energy and solar, and we touched upon also the bagasse sector and more than 250 megawatt of install. So within that frame of 4 years, more than 85% of presently deployed energy was actually met. So now onwards, there are some issues, I don't know, but during my period, we achieved these kinds of achievements. The key problem in Pakistan is this: we are failing in terms of integrating the renewables with the rest of base load conventional technologies because of the fluctuating and intermittent trends of the renewable resource potential. Second important thing I would like to highlight in this forum is the mindset and inertia, which is not allowing these technologies to enter into. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Amjad Sahab, thank you. Let me now go to Amir Durrani. Amir Sahab, let me just quickly ask you this. Are we only talking of solar and wind here, only renewables, or is there any other energy innovation? I mean, that's energy copying. Do you have any innovations?
Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me and can see my screen.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can see your screen.
So I, as usually, took some liberties, and to answer your question, you start with the question that is there only wind and solar? The answer to that is no, there's no wind and solar. I think this is just following certain trends that are either imposed or exactly what we study 2 years back in university, and we follow them. I really like Amjad Saab's tenor. I think he has done more for renewable energy in Pakistan than most people at ADB. But unfortunately, I think this is not, you don't closet or cloister these issues inside certain silos called ADB. These are issues that are macro, and they are concerning multiple sectors. And I think the political narrative for innovation to take place. So I took the liberty, Nadeem Saab, of actually putting together a few slides,
Okay.
which are basically going to focus on why the political narrative and innovation is not happening. Because honestly, there is no innovation in Pakistan currently. And I think Armina very sort of superficially mentioned these things. I think she needs to give us an idea of why this is not. It's not because there is a cost issue. I think let's talk about it. So I think let's try and talk about power beyond politics in Pakistan, the issues and some thoughts on that. And I think for that, first I need to, sort of remind all of us, you guys know this, the people like Amjad and SHAHID, SATTAR and everybody, but for the other audience listening, relatively, what's the energy demand trend happening? What's happening with energy as we go forward? So we must say that no matter what you pick up in terms of IEA or McKinsey or whatever, there are peaking energy demands. But so in other words, coal, power, and fuels and fossil fuels, they have different peaks, some at 2040, some at 2030, if you believe some of the data. But mostly these are going to taper off. But however, power demand stays and the growth of it stays stable. There are multiple reasons for that, which I think all of can, but really one of them is rise in renewables as the primary source of power. Almost 50% of power predicted in the future is from renewables. And this is not just including hydro. These are mostly predictions are based on what we call new renewables, although hydro is also renewable. We're also looking at efficiency gains. We're also looking at, falling demand, especially coal demand alone is predicted to fall by 40% overall. That changes the sort of the map of the sector. I think the other important thing is the steady growth in the power sector demand globally will stay because of switching to electrons. Peripheral impacts are transport, buildings, and obviously industries and services. I think from an important point to say is that the question I have for everybody, and I think you and I can't answer that actually, and I wanted this forum to discuss. Having said that, globally, government stays a major player in energy investments. And I think that is something that we need to be thinking about when we also talk about government's role in the power sector in Pakistan. I think the other important thing as we go ahead is to just not forget that we all have, the whole world has commitments through the SDG 7. And I just wanted to remind people what these were, because it talks of access, it increased the share of renewables and double the rate of improvement in energy efficiency. And I find these goals extremely lacking, and I'll explain why in the next slide. Because the emerging shape of power sector, if you really start thinking about it, is it will be impacted by what we call access, availability, and acceptability. And I think that the SDGs only take care of a certain part of it. Because when we talk of access, we're really talking about affordability and sustainability. Are you able to sustain an affordable rate? Availability is really all around quality and reliability, and acceptability is will the political consensus accept these changes? So it's not the user accepting, but it's really certain changes that people have to accept that no, we will not do coal again. Yes, it matters. Non-commercial use of energy, a percentage of energy used through wood and fossil fuels has to go down. But at the end, what this really means is societal attitudes and mean preferences, whether by value or volume, and really the meaning of growth. If you look at some of the really amazing stuff coming out of some of the Boston Triangle and also from Germany, is people are starting to question the need for growth and therefore the need of the type and continuity of energy and power, especially, that we need to know. And last but not least, everyone is now talking about macro policies. So you don't go head on just because you're ADB and say, let's have electric vehicles all along. And you convince and you screw every other sector. I can give you some examples in question and answers, don't want to waste time. I mean, the great example in Pakistan right now on the inability of thought at the macro level is the Sahiwal coal-fired plant and the impact on Pakistan Railways and vice versa, and coal-fired power plants impact environmentally and on the power sector debt. I hope somebody writes that down, but let's talk about it. But I think the thing which gets us to Pakistan is that even now, despite all the numbers that were given by the ex-ADB CEO, global non-commercial energy use is not sustainable. 14% of total final energy is coming from what we call fuel wood, crop waste, and animal dung. Now, let me give you a comparison. This is 12% of the global primary energy supply, but more importantly, it is twice the total hydropower energy supply in the world and 6 times that supplied by new renewables. Now, this is something to wrap one's mind around, because I think this really holds the key to environment, health, and human growth, whether we look at mines or means, which then brings us to Pakistan. So my last few slides are essentially, after having set the global context, I'm going to talk about non-commercial energy in Pakistan. And this is what I call the MEMS. Some of you are already bored with this term, which we coined about 3 years ago, but this is called the missing energy millions. So we all know why the SDG was set up, 1 billion globally, 80 to 100 million in Pakistan. Almost a tenth of these missing energy millions are actually in Pakistan. Now, how does that come out? Is it a case of poor accounting or poor planning? Because the thing is, when we talk about it, if you look at the energy access data on the World Bank website, it is really skewed. And we have been questioning why it says Pakistan has 95, because basically the way they categorize energy access, power access, is wherever a line is passing and they count all the households underneath. So the actual reality, and this is also coming from World Bank SMAP data, so there's a contradiction in how the bank looks at things in particular context. 70 million Pakistanis not on the grid. 75 million urban and rural grid connected face daily 12-hour rotational blackouts. So in other words, 140 million of the 220 are directly and indirectly impacted or do not have the access. Now, I do agree that yes, a lot of the MEMS market is primarily rural or peri-urban with very little semi-urban footprint, right? And actually, when you look at, and the reason, one thing to note here is that when we talk of innovation and delivering and access and availability, the whole idea is that even CPEC, the so-called CPEC, really talks nothing about the 70 million energy impoverished. So what are we looking at here? We are looking at innovations required for about, at current energy use per capita, we are looking at an 11, 12,000 megawatt market. But at global energy use standards, we're looking at a 100,000 megawatt market, and it's growing, right? So we've talked about this. I think that none of what our current policies take, the Matiari policy, take the whole access issues and how the government looks at it, totally ignores those who don't have access. So what do we do? So I think that globally, one of the things that is coming out is that decentralization of power with community approaches is really supported by government, is the way the world is handling this problem. And you can give me examples of countries, singular examples. You can go to Egypt, you can go to Kenya, you can give me an example of some small island called Vanuatu, you can give me, but at the end of the day, an average, if you look at it, entrepreneurship and community approaches are playing a great deal in supplying the missing power. Now, Pakistan, the innovation that's needed here is it needs a similar vision with solving the problem, while solving. So in other words, the problem is when we start thinking of innovation in power, we couple power sector debt and our thoughts, so it gets clouded. In other words, we take some traditional narratives and then try to go to the future. And actually, really, it sounds passé, but actually real out-of-the-box thinking is now required in the power sector. Why? I'll give you one example. A lot of the people in Pakistan think that the reason we have this lack of access is because the poor can't afford. And I've been harping on this, that you read any study, you can do it at a micro level at a village, which we have done for, let's say, Tata in Sindh, or you can do it at a national level, which was done by SMAP in 2014. Roughly $2 to $3 billion are just being spent on candles and kerosene by the poor. So this whole question of affordability should be thrown out, and this is where the innovation should start. Another important point, I think, and these slides will be available for everybody just to keep this within 7 to 10 minutes. I think the point I want to show you is the next slide. Current approaches, even towards the poor, are unviable. This is a small sort of analysis we did of the current solar home solution being provided by the who through the Pakistan microfinance institutions, and supported by Telenor, supported by everybody, etc. Right? So these solar home solutions, if you look at what they cost the poor, are actually 4 times the average tariff on the grid. This was last year, so it was 48 PKR per unit. And this really does shock you that while you are unable to not just give access, the way you are approaching access is actually it's not thought about properly. So the main problem with electricity, and I really thought I would put something, but this is really the statement I want everyone to absorb. The main problem with electricity vision is that we are looking at it from the point of view of supply and must supply, with ideas emanating from a state of practice rather than collectively envisioned state of future, collaborating with priorities of what we think. So Pakistan technically is unable to visualize its power future independent of the narratives which are either sent by some donors or by some individuals. And I think that is cracking up Pakistan. So what the 3 slides on what to do next. First and foremost, we must develop a macro visualization on future of Pakistan, keeping the politics at bay. And what do I mean by keeping? First, understand the macro picture. Look at what is going to be the future in the next, let's say, don't go to 50 years. Who knows what's going to take 10, 15, 30-year horizons, and look at transport, buildings, industry services alongside energy. And simply do what we call a back of the envelope model. Please decide on a single point source at your house or the industry. Forget this shit about telling, sorry for using that, I take that back. Forget about, I'll send gas to you, I'll send electricity to you, I'll send water to you, I'll send blah, blah, blah to you. And yes, I'll also provide 10 types of fuel for your car. That's, this is not the way the world is thinking. Why are we still beholden to this thought? And I think somebody needs to look at this in the context of a sunk cost analysis. In other words, what if we just abandon this and go forward? Because at 2 trillion, the current power sector debt of ESCOM, South Africa, is about 5 times that. And this is the kind of thought and thinking that some of the energy leaders there are talking about. Just sink all this, right? And nobody has actually done that calculation that what if we sink all this and start anew? Don't be waylaid by detailed modeling. So every time, this happened in the 90s, I think SATTAR will tell you it happened while he was there or he inherited some system. All this detailed macro modeling is a piece of crap. I think we need back of the envelope thinking on collectively. On the power generation fuel mix, let national priorities lead. There are many, many people outside the UN and the Bretton Woods system who still believe that nuclear energy cannot and should not have been abandoned for the density of energy provision that it does. So in other words, we have not yet brought real technology to play there, right? Let communities handle power. So in other words, the other thing is the central grid is what it is, right? It has brought us many good things, many quality improvements in the 20th century. It needs to be rethought. You cannot have, the same, or you need to abandon some of the grid. You need to start thinking of localized grids, because without that, even the concept of alternate or renewable, the new renewables, is not possible. And, let communities handle power locally. They are very good at doing it. And I think this whole decentralization has to go further. This NEPRA, all these institutions need to be closed. I mean, fundamentally shut. And second last, we need to reshape the political narrative around power, while cutting this IPP nuptial cord. Who do we go to ask for our power consultations? We go to the very people who are the cause of it, right? Is this not incest? Is this not conflict? I don't think any proper thinking process would allow this kind of thought prevailing. And, so number one is rethink and renegotiate all IPPs, afford sunk costs, and cut this cord forever, because we cannot have a future at the kind of ROEs and must buy kind of power agreements. And, if they hang with us for 20 years, Pakistan will be sunk. Let's not do that. Let them take us to court. I even say that. Let's do this analysis properly. Inform a change. Stop listening to Gencos and industries. Go bespoke. Don't paint the whole of Pakistan with one white brush. If I travel north, I can tell you need a different strategy. If I train Sindh, you need a different strategy. R&D on this narrative should be outside traditional power opinion makers. Outside, right? It has to be in a center which is independent, right? Lose this obsession with the Indus Cascade. Stop adding mass renewable energy to the grid just because Dubai got it at 1.2 cents. This is a losing narrative. Now, let me tell you what will happen. And I've just taken some clippings from the newspaper to end the talk. So Germany right now at PPP is the 16th highest power cost in the world. In 2014, 70% of all German households live in poverty due to an energy cost explosion. So this is the country that is ahead of the frontier, ahead of the curve, and has gone politically wild in terms of adopting renewables, shutting down nuclear. So I think Pakistan should tread carefully in following global trends and solutions. And I think that's all, Nadeem Saab. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Amir. Thank you. Thank you. You set up a whole research agenda. I'm obviously very enamored of that. I like that. And I think, yes, we need a lot of research and planning. But you kept saying this thing, we. I am always kind of taken aback when you mention we, because our policymakers don't even talk to us. So our thinkers don't even talk to us. So who's this we? I mean, this we that I keep hearing in Pakistan, as if this we exists. Amir, there is no we. And there is no thinking. Nobody thinks in this country. There's no research agenda in this country. So with that, let me turn to Madam Sobia, Dr. Sobia Beg. Dr. Saiba, you are the head of the Energy Research Center in ComSats. Who is this we that Amir talks about? And where is this research going to happen? As far as I'm concerned, there's not a single energy research center in the country. As far as I'm concerned, there's no demand for energy research. Even if we do any energy research, nobody buys it. So, Dr. Saiba.
Okay, thank you, Amrsab. Thank you very much for inviting me for this webinar. It's been very informative, listening to three of the speakers right now. And when you talk about we, and we actually means the people who are concerned for Pakistan, including the researchers like us. So we are the researchers, and you're quite right when you say when we do our part of the research, when we do our bit. The think tanks which are not actually there, that should be formulating the policies, our research is not listened to or applied or even implemented later on. So however, we or you can say our researchers, all of us, are doing our own bit in our own isolated you can say areas. And the one thing I think that brought out that I can conclude from Amir Saab's presentation in his talk was one word is synergy. So what he's been telling us is that we need to synergize our efforts when we talk about macro policies, and when we talk about policies that need to focus not only just one sector of energy, or just they don't need to focus on industry or just big power players. So we need to synergize our efforts, and that synergy is actually what is needed right now. Now, coming back to the topic of energy innovations, we have a lot of work going on in centers. When you said that there are no research centers, there are centers which are doing their own bit of work. I am heading one right now in ComStats University. One is in, you can say, in NAST in Islamabad. One is they recently set up in LUMS. So academia on its part is trying to play its role. However, what we need is synergy with the industry and synergy with the government that can listen to what we are trying to put together. The best optimal solution for the energy policy of Pakistan would not only be my proposed one, it would be something which should be acceptable to all. So when we look at the fact that there are when we say there are no energy innovations, yes, there are no energy innovations in the sense that we are not actually taking the research from the academia and trying to implement it. In case of energy research, when I talk about what I have been, because I just recently took over the center, we have been focusing our attention on energy digitization. So you see, what we need is actually when you don't have the complete clear picture of the energy sector of Pakistan, you cannot plan perfectly, or you cannot even allocate your funds, allocate your resources accordingly. So we need to have a clear picture of what's actually happening. And for that, we need to have a digitized grid, a digitized energy grid that can tell us what's happening in each part of the grid. So that's what we are trying to do over here. I would just like to mention one part that recently in my interactions with some European researchers, they have digital twins of their grids right now in their labs. So whatever happening in a particular household, if it's connected with a renewable source or not, they have it on their map in their labs. So they can, with one click on their computer screens, they can look at what's happening in a particular household. However, I don't perceive that this is going to happen very soon in Pakistan. However, what can do is we can take some bits, you can say small projects, install smart meters, collect digital data from those meters. This will help us create a clear picture of what is actually happening over there. And later on, what's going to happen is that we will be able to plan, share load forecasting. We don't need to go everywhere and at every point for capital cost and big power plants. We can have spinning reserves coming in, and we can do that with the help of the picture that we will have in our computers. So what we need to do is we have to have a digital imaging of our grid. And I'm not saying that it's going to happen overnight. Obviously, it's not going to happen overnight. However, in stepwise or phase-wise, you can say procedure or methodology, we can actually implement it. And once we have that data with us, we can plan. And now this is going to take a long time while we have this data. So we need not wait for that time. We can apply the renewable policies, not only implement those renewables integrated within the grid, and then also look at those resources which are more optimal for our environment, for our solution, for our economy. So it's not just looking at the grid in the way that we need to incorporate renewables and then come up with a very environmental friendly solution. Yes, that's one part of the picture. But however, when we look at Pakistan's economic strategical position, then we need to see what is the best optimal solution economically for us as well. So this is from my part. If I would like to discuss further if some other point comes up. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm very glad to hear that we've got some, centers. Although I just put it out on the chat room and there is nobody from ComCert or NUST in the audience here. So that kind of takes the wind out of the fact that you've got these centers. It seems these people are not really interested in doing energy research, but we'll leave it at that. Let's go on to Mehroz Rafiq Saab. Mehroz Saab, you are chairman of the associate with NEPRA. Can you tell us what you are doing to promote energy innovation? And in particular, what I'd like to ask you, given what these people have said, that there is a we, so NEPRA technically represents a we for us. So where is the we? And I remember in the planning commission, I'll go to Shahid Saab last, I deliberately did that. Shahid Saab will tell us there used to be some energy planning, and Shahid Saab used to be a member of energy, and I hope Waqas Mir is with us today. Waqas is here today too. He's doing some energy planning now. So where is the planning function in energy? Is there any, or do we just continue to just say these nice things to please the donors, but in reality, we are just doing haphazard things like setting up coal plants randomly, like setting up all kinds of things randomly? Mehroz Saab.
Hello, everybody, and Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for having me here. And amazing presentation by Amir Saab. I think I've lost my video, but I'll continue with the audio. Before I say anything, I would like to give a different perspective to this conversation we're having here, like where it all starts. So energy policies all over the globe are designed to address the energy trilemma. There is a lot of focus that is being placed on achieving United Nations Sustainable Development Goals of late. And it is driving the need to bring innovative solutions to achieve the goals in time. The world, I think, it needs to move forward from just targeting to provide basic energy access to the consumers of electricity. The energy access, it needs to be affordable. It needs to be reliable. It needs to be scalable, and it needs to be environmentally sustainable. These are the components that every country needs to look into. These are the components that the developing countries they're targeting now, since they do not have energy access issues with their consumers, with people living in their countries. And this is where the requirement of innovation comes to the table. I think innovation is not just limited to the innovation in technology. We need innovation in policies. We need innovation in regulatory frameworks. We need innovation in financial models. And innovation, I believe, is an enabler. It is making possible the technology, the technological innovations, the innovation in policies, the innovations and the new financing schemes. They have made it possible for people to have a quality access to energy in areas where it seemed impossible and made no economic sense for the government or the institutions working on it to lay down the infrastructure, just for an example. And as Amr Saab has rightly pointed out, like the distributed generation, it is doing wonders in terms of energy access. You can provide energy access to people without getting bothered with laying down the transmission lines, without getting bothered with laying down the distribution network and the other things related to it. And I mean, what our government is doing, what is happening in Pakistan in terms of policies and regulatory framework. I think the new ARE policy, it has set very aggressive targets, and it's a very right step in my point of view. There's new electric vehicles policy. There's green financing policy of the state bank, and the regulator, as I work there, we are working on microgrids, we are working on EV regulatory framework, we are working on energy storage. And I mean, when we talk about the impediments and what is stopping us from achieving all these innovative sort of ideas, or working on these innovative ideas or implementation of these innovative ideas, is I think there's a lack of institutional and infrastructural capacity that needs to be worked upon. There's a considerable gap between industry and academia, and we sitting here is one of the reasons for that. We at NEPRA, as Nadeem Saab was asking, where is the we want everybody to participate. We want everybody to give suggestions. We want everybody to feel valued. We want everybody to come and participate in bringing this innovation in the power sector. I mean, just an example is whenever we come up with the policy, whenever we come up with something that is changing in the regulatory framework, or even if it is a tariff, we invite public comments, and we expect everybody. I mean, obviously there are so many other things that people working as universities, as research centers, they have to look at. But I mean, on our part, we are trying to make sure that we get ideas from everybody that get implemented and that get incorporated in whatever the final result is. And then there's so many constraints at the ground level that needs to be addressed, There are, I mean, implementation level, there's so many issues. There are governance issues, and then there are issues with our distribution companies. I mean, innovation in technology that requires involvement of literally everybody that is a stakeholder in the policy sector, in the power sector. And there is an issue with sector cohesion. The government organizations, for example, tasked with different assignments and different sectors of the power sector, they're driving the power sector in different directions. I mean, even if the direction is same, there is an issue with the pace, and that is causing a huge hindrance in the implementation of these things. And as far as the research and R&D is concerned, I think we are way back as compared to the rest of the world. And I mean, I can give the regulators' point of view on it. We are trying to. We are still in process, and we are working on this. Very soon, inshallah, we'll be inviting the heads of the universities to come and sit with us, to come and create a forum that that can help the regulator, that can help the power sector in moving forward with the innovative ideas, and to bring about a change in the power sector, the right thing, the right change that all of us are waiting for. Thank you. I think that's all from me.
Thank you, Mero Sab. Thank you. Wonderful. Shahid Sab, now I'll come to you. Please sum up for me a few things that come to my mind. First of all, this question of we. I think, quite frankly, there is no we in Pakistan. We are all individuals. Universities don't talk to each other. The Planning Commission divisions don't talk to each other. The Planning Commission doesn't talk to the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance doesn't talk to the AD. Well, they control everybody. So, I mean, quite frankly, who is this we, first of all? Secondly, you and I both know that the cabinet or nowhere in the government is there any demand for research. Yes, they take a PowerPoint slide and it's government by PowerPoint, and after that they forget it. Secondly, Shahid, but I'd also like to ask you a couple of questions. When I hear this thing about access that Amir mentioned, I'm sorry, Amir, I get very nervous. What does access mean? Does electricity or anything for that matter, is it a right? Is it a universal right? Does everybody, even if I live in the outer boonies and I'm enjoying myself, I must get cheap electricity? Or is it only a right for certain dense areas? And quite frankly, Shahid Sahab, nobody's talking about demand innovation. I think the innovation on the demand side too. Everybody talks about supply innovation. What about demand innovation? And then it comes to another question that you and I have often talked about, but right now winter is coming and we'll be wasting gas like there's no tomorrow. We'll be, these heaters that when I go to people's rooms, overheated rooms, the heaters blasting away, burning raw gas, I kind of balk and I said, this is ridiculous. How can you do this? Then coming to, there's another issue that kind of bothers me. This EV policy, I hope we don't have an EV policy. Please, kill the EV policy. Not last time, we've had a few car policies, and all the car policies have done is created an energy drain. I mean, I think fuel standards and the fuel usage is the worst in the world, and our car policy has not helped energy demand at all. So I suspect when we have an EV policy, we'll again subsidize some domestic producer. Let me put it a little provocatively, Shahid Sahab. Is there an EV policy without Tesla? EV policy should be only one thing, get Tesla to come. Otherwise, there is no EV policy because even Honda, Ford, nobody can compete with Tesla. Tesla is a market leader and Tesla is the only one that has efficient electrical energy. Secondly, for God's sakes, there's another problem. EV also, there are studies to show, is not necessarily the biggest energy saver because you do still need to produce energy. So there's a lot of stuff here that I want you to unpack. Please, Shahid Sahab.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. First of all, I'd like to say that Mr. Amir Zafar Durrani's presentation opened my mind at least. This country cannot move forward unless we cut the cords that are connect us with the old system that is prevalent in Pakistan. That system will bring us down if we do not do that. And it will bring us down in 2, 3, 4 years. Not any more than that, because there is no way that this country's economy can keep pace with the already existing contracts that we have entered into for 30 years, additional 30 years from today. When we look at what NEPRA is doing and what the ministry is doing, they're talking of not even allowing the first step in the opening of markets, which is business to business deals. Without business to business deals, and this is not even distribution level, this is just at the 1 megawatt minimum level, where the first step towards establishment of markets takes place. So there is going to be no market in Pakistan. Let's be clear about that. And secondly, let me go back to your question about there being sharing of information or collective thinking on any policy matter, especially energy. First of all, there was a strong attempt when I was in the Planning Commission to have the integrated energy model up and running. I was not for it, and I was the one who shut it down at that time, with your permission, of course, because the central energy management or planning system, as we call it, died back in the 40s and 50s. We don't have uh, that sort of a control in the economy, or that sort of leeway that you can plan or do anything in that is integrated. The ministries, especially, and the companies, they are loath to share any data. And as far as the universities go and these innovation centers go and so forth, I work for industry, and I can assure you, nobody from any university or any of these centers has ever approached us for any sort of collaboration or any sort of work on any innovation in energy. So, and these things do not happen in isolation. The universities and the people who are supposed to think and innovate have to work with industry in order to come up with new solutions that are acceptable to all. When there is no contact between the two, how can there be any progress on that front? Um, the and going forward, I had put together a few slides. They're redundant in the light of what Amir Durrani has said, but I'd still like to go through them. The next slide, please. This presentation covers some key energy challenges. Next slide. Right. We need energy in the world and in Pakistan that's abundant, that's affordable, and that's clean. I mean, these are very, how should I say, mama papa sort of goals, but this is what it boils down to. Next, please. What we are talking of is we have a fragile economy with limited resources, and as a developing country, we must find a way to produce and distribute energy. This is wrong. I don't think distribution of energy is any more required. I think the world is changing, and the world is moving towards a solution or solutions which are off-grid and localized. Next, please. As I said, we are mostly going to off-grid energy solutions, solar power being just one of them. There are many others. And next, please. Well, in Pakistan, we have a highly inefficient use of resources. We use a lot more energy to convert 1 unit of energy into a unit of GDP. Our cost of power production is much higher than other regional countries. We have imbalances between the policies of not only gas and power, but petroleum and other products. We have um, a very bad usage of gas, which is only available to, say, about 25–26% of the population. And most of the population uses the gas most inefficiently, as I'll show you next. Next, please. As I said, only 25–26% of the population have access to pipeline gas, and high energy consuming products in the market are the main ones are tube wells and all types of motors and pumps. And then we have water geysers and gas stoves and heaters, which operate, at between 8% and 22% efficiency, when the rest of the world does not allow or does not have products on the market which are less than 40–50% efficient in conversion. Similarly, We still have metallic fans, whereas if you build the same fans with plastics, they're 40% more energy efficient. Next, please. Um, how do we get to enforce some sort of an energy efficiency in the market in Pakistan? That the only way that I can think of is, apart from raising prices to a level which makes it impossible for people to buy more and burn it or use it inefficiently, is that we control the products that are for sale in the market. Like, for example, the old types of air conditioners, which are not inverter made, inverter type technologies, we should not allow them to be sold anymore. Similarly, uh, the gas water heaters that we have, we should just ban all geysers and go to the geysers that are on tap, or which turn on when you turn on the tap and turn off when you don't. Uh, you'd be surprised at the quantum of saving involved in that. The last estimate that that was undertaken by SUI Southern and SUI Northern back in 2014 was they could save 400 to 500 mmCFD just in the water heating load, which is basically half the LNG that is imported into Pakistan currently. Next, please. Again, going back on this, if you introduce a better usage of energy in all products in Pakistan, then obviously there will be more disposable income. You'll have a better standard of living. You can afford to spend on other things also, which currently the state is sort of contributing towards through these lifeline energies, subsidies, and so forth. Uh, but at the same time, even the higher end energy users in Pakistan, they are consuming all these energy sources most inefficiently. The next, please. Again, we need improvements on the supply side, which are obviously wind, solar, hydro, geothermal, as well as base load. And as Amir very rightly pointed out, we have to rely on an energy dense solution, which is nuclear. For Pakistan, perhaps that is one of the solutions, the least cost solution, if not the most appropriate solution at present. The long-term solution, you see, you can't have a grid that is purely supplied by solar and wind. You don't have wind all the time, you don't have solar all the time, and you don't have storage. Obviously, you can't have storage. And so you do need base loads, and you do need some capacity that is available to offset when the other renewable energies are not available. On demand side, as Dr. Nadeem pointed out, we waste a lot of energy in heating and in cooling because our buildings are not designed. They are not double glazed. We don't have false ceilings. We don't have the standardized sort of building which is energy efficient. And again, energy efficient buildings were ENERG, which is now converted the name to NICA. The government has converted its name. Had been pushing that for, I think, ages now. And I think there is a bill that has been passed by Parliament also that all new builds have to follow certain codes. But in practice, I don't see any implementation of those building codes. Next, please. Again, distributed systems offer tailor-made energy supply solutions at the consumer level. And the decarbonized systems, which are the solar and wind and also hydel and nuclear to an extent. These are required because we cannot afford the greenhouse gases, which are raising the temperatures to a point where the weather is changing around the world. Next, please. We do need innovative solutions for energy storage and also microgrids and community-based microgrids. And as Amir Durrani Saab pointed out, Pakistan has a long history of microgrid solutions up in the northern areas, where these villages have collectively installed small hydel units and charge 2, 3, 4 rupees a unit to everyone in the pool, and then that is used to service the facility or to replace it when the time comes, and it works fine. Even today, if you go into Gilgit-Baltistan, you'll have hundreds of such facilities, thousands in fact. And again, PIDO has done a lot of work on this also, and which is very commendable. I think that is the solution ultimately we'll all have to come down to, because as Ermina pointed out in the last seminar, that the import of solar equipment into Pakistan, if you just add that up over the last 3-4 years, it is phenomenal. And if that amount of solar is installed in Pakistan, it means 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 megawatts has already gone outside the grid or off grid, or is partially contributing in the system directly to some of the consumers without them being, they also have supply from the grid, but since the solar solutions only supply electricity for a short time, they use the solar system to reduce the average cost of electricity that is available to them. Next, please. Again, distributed smart grids are the way of the future as far as I see, and these will come about whether we like it or not, and the state will have to abandon the centralized system of the national grid and huge projects and 30-year contracts and IPPs and rates of return, and those are things of the past. And as Amir Saab said, in South Africa, the circular debt is 10 times that of Pakistan. If you just go across the border to India, you can't even imagine how many more times the circular debt over there is. I think it's about 40 times the debt of Pakistan. And this is something that people need to see, that how are they going to address. All countries will have to face this because you have redundancy, and this redundancy cannot be charged to the future. This redundancy has to be written off in some manner or the other. Next, please. I've already talked about these. Next, please. Being part of the industry, let me tell you that what is happening in industry at the moment is that they are focusing on trying to get their own energy solutions away from the grid altogether. And they are planning to install all the new plants in clusters which are totally not connected to the grid, because the grid electricity is so much more expensive than what you can generate on your own, that it just doesn't make sense to industry to have a connection from the grid anymore. And once industry moves away from the grid, the grid is left with all the consumers who are being cross-subsidized currently by industry. So as a consequence, ultimately, the grid is going to fail. Next, please. Then coming back to the NEPRA, NEPRA holds these public hearings on various issues quite often. And I've attended quite a few of them. And in quite a few of them, I'm perhaps the only outsider. The last hearing that was held on the NTDC, I think I was the only person who was present, even though it was a web-based hearing. I was the only one who was not part of the NTDC or NEPRA or the discourse. I don't think there is that sort of a communal system in Pakistan, which allows people to come in and discuss and come to some solutions collectively. And even when NEPRA tried to hold a hearing for Karachi Electric, whether they should have exclusivity or not, look what happened. A certain section of the Karachi society came on to that hearing, and the hearing was suddenly called off, and with no conclusion. And I don't think NEPRA has become any the wiser for having held that public hearing. So under these circumstances, I don't think that we are going anywhere unless we come collectively together and decide to write off what has happened in the past and start with a new clean slate and look at this, what is going to happen in the future and what we need to do to address and be part of the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Shahid Sahab. I think that's very well summarized. Let's come down to this very simple question. Look, the one thing I've learned in economics over a long career is that ultimately we must think in systems fashion. We must think systemically. We must think of a system as a whole. The energy is absolutely critical. Folks, raise your hands if you want to ask a question. I'm just now getting ready to ask, to go to the floor. I'm just summing up until you raise your hands. So unless we think systemically, energy is absolutely critical to human civilization. Energy is what has determined civilization. Our ability to harness energy is what humanity is really, the quest has been to harness energy and distribute energy and to make us an energy efficient human being. Two things that we've been trying to do: manage energy and manage data, information. On both we are failing. We have no good internet access in Pakistan. When I try and hold a web class, our students complain that there is no web availability. Forget the outer areas. I don't even care for rural areas. There's no web availability in Lahore, Islamabad, etc. Very poor web availability. Okay. Now the question is, where should we go? So to my panel, I'd like to, Shahid Sahab, you didn't take my question on Tesla. I would like to take that up with Mehruz Sahab. Mehruz Sahab, please note that. Can you have an EV policy without Tesla, or are you creating another car industry that will take us for a ride for 40 years? Similarly, should we be subsidizing cell phones now, because we are getting to the stage of subsidizing cell phones and therefore kind of creating a lobby that will? Nowadays, unfortunately, nothing stays still. Everything moves very rapidly because the world is innovating very rapidly. Pakistan is not. We keep talking about value chains, but I would urge you to consider we are not in a part of the innovation chain. We try to come into the value chain at the very bottom of the barrel, you know, where things are not being innovated. We are making t-shirts and we think we are part of the global value chain. No, we are not. Global value chain is an innovation chain, and we are not a part of the global innovation chain. We cannot have an EV policy without Tesla. I'm going out on a limb again. So please comment on that, folks. Another thing that I'd like to raise, Amer and Shahid and Amina, I'd like to raise this with you. Are you just telling me that we should do this? Or one thing is, hey, guys, go for growth. Just let everybody have the opportunity of doing what the hell they like. Make a mess, but grow. Unfortunately, what you're trying to do is you guys are trying to put too much we in here. Therefore, all of us are trying to think as a we when we should be thinking in the market fashion where I'm thinking of me, you're thinking of you, and I'm thinking of making my profit and you're thinking of making your profit, and let's get on with that bloody thing of making a profit before we think of doing this we. The we thing is the government, and the government, as we've seen, is totally incapable of doing this we. So I think this is something that we have to really take. The second thing, Shahid Saab, you said there's a bill on demand. I don't see anything on demand. I still can't get double glazed windows in Pakistan. I have to get the most horrible windows in Pakistan. Every time I come to the US, just like I've come here today, I can see I'm sitting in a house where energy is very little used. I've noticed that the air conditioning system comes on very seldom, because it is an energy efficient house. Our building standards are totally energy inefficient. Besides, Shahid Sahib, if we are going all the way from Lahore to Islamabad in a sprawl, can you have energy efficiency in a sprawl? We are now making a river Ravi project, which is going to take Lahore to Gujranwala, and Gujranwala is extending to Gujarat, and Gujarat is extending. So basically, Lahore to Islamabad is one city. So is that energy efficient? Our cars, are they energy efficient? I mean, I think you guys are just spinning a story for me. In reality, we are going to remain energy inefficient. So Shahid Sahib, hold it. Just hang on. Bring in somebody here for one thing.
We are in a
hold on. I'll come back to all of you. Shaheen and Nisar, go ahead. Anybody wants to raise your hands now. Later, don't come in. When I've closed, then don't come in. Then you crib and complain. Shahina, are you coming in?
Yes. Thank you so much. I am really encouraged to hear all the speakers. And in the end, Mr. Shahid SATTAR, who said they are forming their own energy solutions. And I used to wonder what is going to happen to this country. I live outside US. I worked in other countries, and I worked on different things actually. And as far as and I believe that energy has a big role to play for development and growth. And I think this is the biggest costly factor for manufacturing and all that. And I think it's very good. My response to you, Nadeem ul Haq, on access, I think access is, I think that should be something which should be a driving force for all sections of societies. I have a brother who said, I have installed solar panels so that, I could not, so that my house could have electricity. And then, energy conservation is very important. I know that the World Bank had been trying to promote energy efficiency in buildings and other places in Pakistan, in the whole supply chain and the demand side, conservation on the demand side. But I don't know, the government has never been interested in this energy efficiency. I would like to congratulate Amir, but Amir, I worked on a project in Laos when Norm 10.2 was being appraised. And at the same time, there was a rural electrification project where, I did the economic appraisal of solar power system. My question to all of you, I've also been interested in environment, and we have this National Determined Contribution, NDC's report. And when I read the NDC report, I was really, a couple of years back, I was really disappointed to see that, coal still holds a big role in the energy planning of Pakistan. And there is no, and then I hear many small manufacturers and others, who are contributing to solar energy in remote areas, and they are having their projects. So my question is there any institution in Pakistan who are keeping a tab and quantifying the contribution of, renewable energy, excluding hydro? How it is contributing, how it's expanding, and what role it's going to make. I think we need to look at the visionary aspects and look at the big goals and have a vision that by certain year, the country will have, you know, a certain level of achievement in terms of different policies. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shahina. Ijaz Ahmed Minhas sahab. Ijaz Minhas,
go ahead.
you
Sir,
go ahead.
go ahead.
अनम्यूट कर लें अपने आप को, चलें जी बोलें.
सर अनम्यूट है इजाज साहब.
हाँ, आवाज नहीं आ रही उनकी. Ijaz sir, we can't hear you.
Can we?
Now we can hear you. Go ahead. जी.
Can you hear me?
जी, we can. Go ahead. बोलिए.
In Pakistan, we see that government has established energy departments at provincial level, but they hardly work for any energy innovation projects. The important tangible innovation they did is the upgrading the post of Secretary Energy Department to the level of Additional Chief Secretary Energy Department. I will put my question to the whole panel. How the mindset of major stakeholders, that is people working and bureaucrats working in the energy department and political rulers, can be molded to work for energy innovation projects in the country, and also to formulate workable and useful public policy in this area. Thank you.
Very good.
Yes, I have to answer this question if you allow me.
एक सेकंड, कौन बोल रहा है जी?
This is Amjad Ali Awan.
जी, Amjad sir, I'm coming back to you. Just 1 second. Acha ji, I think quite frankly, I'm coming back to all of you. I think everybody's raised this wonderful issue about mindset. The secretaries in the government have their own mindset. The researchers have their own mindset. As NTDC just said, they've been approaching researchers. They don't want to come in, as I said. They don't want to do research with NTDC. We try to invite them. They don't want to come to webinars. As Shahid Sahab said, they don't want to work with industry. So researchers are not innocent. Researchers also have a mindset issue. Same thing on the policy making side. Same thing on the industrial side. Industrialists also don't want to talk to us. Nobody wants to talk to each other. So Pakistan is a huge mindset problem where I go back to Amir Durrani again. There is no we here, Amir. There is no we here. The we is only in the minds of people like us. Even the donors who make our policies don't want to sit with us. They don't want to talk to us. They want to make policies on their own, sitting outside and hiring, I don't know who they hire. They don't even know Pakistan. But then they make policies for us. So this is a huge conundrum. We don't want to have growth. We want to protect industries of our countries, like we're going to protect the EV industry. We're going to make electric vehicles that will run for 30 miles and then stop, and then they'll charge like they'll charge a rate that will be absolutely prohibitive for us, but yet we'll subsidize that industry, and then we'll wonder, oh my God, the circular debt went up again. So what do we do? So here, Amjad Saab, I'll bring you back in. Go ahead, answer any question that you like.
Thank you, Nadeem Saab. I appreciate the question of Ijaz Saab. And I've been through the wonderful presentation from the panelists. And one thing, they talked about different sort of innovations and processes and technologies. But I think we should acknowledge this fact: we are expecting too much from the system, which is already at the rock bottom, touching the rock bottom. So one big question that you asked, who are we? So very bluntly and frankly, listen that all the researchers, all the technical and technological people, even the incumbent chief executive officers and sector in charges are not the we. So excluding this, what is left is the we. I will give you one brief example of my own tenure as a CEO ADB. Now, at my time, we were touching the figures of 1950 megawatt first time in Pakistan. The resource mapping was in place in all the provinces of Pakistan. Now, the solar standards were already approved by the government of Pakistan, adopted by. So it was a takeoff stage, and mainly because of the policy vehicle was available. So on one good evening, the we people, decided to scrap that policy and go for the new one. And the sector in charge, CEO ADB, sitting vehemently saying, don't go for that, that is a catastrophe. But somebody else is taking to scrap that policy and go for the new one, which is devastating right now. I believe the new current renewable energy policy is not going to ignite any response from the investor side. So the question arises, who is actually taking decision? Who is actually recommending the decisions before certain decision makers? And these are the we people. So one key critical reason behind we are not catching up with the things is our decision-making process, which is not well structured, which is not professional, and somebody is taking decision on behalf of some whims or caprices we don't know. This is the situation. Ijaz Saab has raised the question of provincial governments. So let alone my frank comment is this: when provincial governments are not doing their job in providing the food, cloth, shelter, and basic amenities to people, how can they think about energy? How can we think from the provincial government to provide the energy things to the remote communities and even the connected communities in the urban areas? So we are basically too much. The system in Pakistan, comprising of our policies, our institutional setup, and our political decision making, is not allowing any energy innovations, any new trends. It's basically discouraging. Previous years, we experienced in Punjab the formation of corporations to handle different things like municipal services, solid waste management. But in the end, what happened? We scrapped everything, and we are asking the position holders of those organizations to return the salary because you are taking too much. So, and under this system, who is going to take decision? So, my point of view and my take is this: the current institutional setup, your bureaucratic setup, and your political decision making are incapacitated or insensitive towards introducing any change, and we should not expect too much unless we have a drastic changes, structural changes to make things go. Thank you.
Well put, well put. So you're saying basically the government is just not capable of taking decisions, has no capacity, has no process. Very
unfortunately, good. Unfortunately.
Wonderful. Who else from the panel would like to go? Amina, would you like to go?
I have to leave Naveem Saab, so I'll just make a quick comment before I depart. I just wanted to say that, all the discussion that was had today, every issue raised by each panelist was important in its own right. However, I have to say that we've conflated several issues, and innovation, the way it's understood typically, energy innovation particularly, relates primarily to technology. In fact, innovation generally in any field primarily relates to technology. And although there can be policy innovation, but in its typical sense, innovation relates to technological innovation. In energy, our innovation capacity is limited, as it is in many other scientific fields. That's just a reality of our country. We're a developing nation with limited resources. So until we're at a point where we can innovate our way through all our current problems, it's not a bad idea to adopt whatever innovation already exists to at least address our issues in the short term. So for instance, commercial and technical losses, line losses, are an immediate problem that need to be fixed in the near term, in a couple of months, not even in a couple of years. And for that, there are technological solutions available that can be adopted immediately. In the medium term, I do agree with Amir and the others. There are options such as microgrids or localized grids that one can look at, or that the policymakers can perhaps look at. However, microgrids, especially for urban centers, are not at the point where they can be adopted at scale. So imagine a city of the size of Karachi adopting microgrids or cutting off from the grid entirely. That is a process that would, even under the best of circumstances with unlimited resources, take a significantly longer time than the time horizon I'm talking of, or the time horizon that is available to Pakistan to address our most immediate problems. And then one reason why electricity is so heavily regulated all over the world is because it's traditionally treated as a commodity that should be available to everyone at a reasonable cost. However, now since renewables have made it so affordable, even in an off-grid setting, lesser regulation is not only an option, but also desirable. in many circumstances. So with that, thank you again for inviting me to speak, and I'll beg leave now. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Hermina. I think, quite frankly, we have to challenge ourselves a lot more in terms of thinking about the solution. One thing that I will not take, I quite frankly do not agree that we are resource poor. I think last year's Nobel Prize winner, Paul Romer, said, and I think I agree with him wholeheartedly, he was my classmate. In fact, we had a common teacher, Robert Lucas, who said that poor countries are not resource poor countries are idea poor. And I think that's our biggest problem, we are idea poor. Before I go back to the panel, I'd like to bring in Adil Najam here. Adil Najam, you're watching silently. You've been working on climate change, you know energy. Please tell us who is the we here, and this business about policy, and can we make good policy? Can we be innovative? Can we research? Adil Saab, I am very pessimistic.
Sir, आप ज़्यादती कर देते हैं. You always do this. I am a prowler. I just come here to learn because my other alternative was watching TV. And the danger with your things is that one might learn.
Get away with it.
So this option is better. I'm here to learn. I really don't. And I haven't. I joined a little late, so I might have missed things. But thank you so much. आपके pessimism का तो Nadeem, you're always pessimistic. तो वो तो हम side पे रख देते हैं. ठीक है. But there is a we problem. I do think there's a we problem. But I think there is also a me problem. In the sense that, so allow me again, I might have missed, people might have said this. In a way, you mentioned this point. I am always very surprised from an outside perspective, energy seems to be underpriced in Pakistan. Because if it was correctly priced, आपको वो Windows वाला problem नहीं होना चाहिए.
Good point.
ये तो हमने एक फैशन बना लिया कहना कि ये बड़ी प्राइस्ड है. अगर असल में हाई प्राइस्ड है, we wouldn't be wasting it. We are not only one of the most energy poor countries in the world, we are nearly certainly the most energy wasteful country. I believe हमारी ranking उसमें Saudi Arabia के साथ है, right? In terms of productivity. So in some ways, I think the energy producers have become too much a part of this. And in some way, I'm not a Chicago man. On this one, I think the market ought to be given its own fair share. Because the behavior just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me that all the people who crib about pricing are using it so wastefully. And wastefully ka main sirf environment baat nahi kar raha. I'm talking about efficiency, right? Energy is essentially a unit of, it's a currency. It is an economic input and it depends on what you get out of it. So if I am choosing कि मैं air conditioner चला के खिड़की खोली भी है मैंने, because जो आपकी खिड़की है वो खिड़की खोलने की तरह ही है ना, it is wafer thin, and it is not a technological problem, then essentially what I'm saying is that energy is too cheap. And the other thing on this is, again, I'm going out of my realm. There are people here who know the economics better. I can talk about, but allow me this. The other thing is subsidies. I think subsidies, as I have grown, and again, I'm not a Chicago man. Subsidies are a bad idea in general, and a particularly bad idea in energy. One of the worst policy ideas in my lifetime was that we will insure your profit. यार ये किस किस्म की बिजनेस होती है कि we will ensure कि we will buy energy at this price. And what had started as a peripheral idea and has become in so many countries the central idea is just a recipe for a rentier economy. So that is my little rant for this. Now, as far as the environment is concerned, I'll give you my one line and then leave it for others. On that, I am very clear. My argument for solar or wind or others has got nothing to do with climate anymore. They're just making sense. It is like, would you choose if I say कि जी आपने iPhone लेना है या landline लगानी है? Which one would you choose today? Show me the person who would say कि जी नहीं मैंने iPhone नहीं लेना, मुझे जरा landline लगा दें, मुझे जरा MP4 की जगह cassette player ले दें. And that is what we do with energy when we do coal. Coal is a redundant, dying, dead technology. Look at every graph everywhere in the world and it shows that it is coming down. The only people who have coal is कि उनके पास है, so because the investment is there, it will run out. So in a way, the leapfrogging argument is just a simple one. I keep saying last, this will be the last, but the thing that I cannot boggles my mind is that the cost of renewables in Pakistan does not make sense. If Spain, in Spain, your renewable is cheaper. If in Saudi Arabia it is cheaper. If in Abu Dhabi it is cheaper, then coal. Then when someone says in Pakistan it is too expensive, either they are lying or there is a corruption in the middle of this. There is some place where something is being taken out because it just doesn't make sense. क्योंकि ये तो नहीं हो सकता कि पूरी दुनिया एक तरफ है और हमारा cost structure is different. So between whether it is not just wind and solar, I am quite convinced that most of the people or many of the certainly young people on this call will be getting their energy from drilling a hole in the ground and getting geothermal. There will be a whole host. We are going back to a place. There was an interim of about 150 years when we had one source of energy called hydrocarbon, which was so wonderful that you could put it in a box, you could put it in everything. Now we are going back to a place where we will have 10 different sources of energy. We will still use oil, we'll still use a little coal. We are already, everyone carries a battery in their pocket. We will have solar for certain things. We will have wind for other things. It will be an energy mix, and that's where the great question comes in. But sorry, because you sort of surprise attacked me, my comments weren't cogent.
Adil,
but it is always good to be here and learn.
As people can see, Boston, as people can see, Boston and Chicago agree on good economics. Economics is telling us very clear signals. Now I'll come back to you. Shah Sahab, before I come back to you, let me take Tawseefur Rahman Sahab from NTDC. He wants to say something. Tawseefur Rahman Sahab.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
We can hear.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
अच्छा, कुछ गुजारिशात मैं करना चाह रहा था. Basically, I'm Deputy Manager Planning in the Power Planning Department of NTDC. अभी देखिए हम ये बात करते हैं बार बार कि जो रिन्यूएबल है वो बहुत सस्ता है. देखिए वो ठीक है, स्पेन में हो सकता है सस्ता, किसी और में सस्ता हो सकता है. ग्राउंड रियलिटीज पाकिस्तान में ये हैं कि इस वक्त 5.87 का लास्ट सोलर का टैरिफ है जो कि नेपरा ने दिया है, और तकरीबन 8 सेंट का टैरिफ है जो कि विंड का लास्ट टाइम नेपरा ने दिया है, और कोल का जो है वो 7.7 सेंट टैरिफ है जो कि कोल का अभी नेपरा ने दिया है. देखिए अब ये जो बात है कि फ्यूचर में जाके सोलर और विंड जो है वो बहुत सस्ती हो जाएगी, ऐसे हो जाएगी. अगर आप 94 में देखें जब हमने जो आईपीपीज की थी ना, आईपीपीज पॉलिसी बनी थी, तो उस वक्त भी यही सारी बातें चल रही थी कि जी ये तेल तो बहुत सस्ता हो जाना है और ये तो पानी से भी सस्ता हो जाना है, लिहाजा आप लगा लें. और जो आई एम नॉट अगेंस्ट रिन्यूएबल्स, उनका एक कंसिडरेबल एनर्जी शेयर आपके एनर्जी मिक्स में होना चाहिए, लेकिन इसके साथ साथ इट ब्रिंग्स यू अनदर बिग कॉस्ट, क्योंकि इनका जो कैपेसिटी फैक्टर है जिसको हम कहते हैं कि ये 20% या हार्डली 30% है, जो भी बहुत एफिशिएंट जो सोलर और रिन्यूएबल के प्लांट्स होते हैं. इट मींस कि आपको उसके साथ इनकी इंटरमिटेंसी को मीट करने के लिए आपको एक और कोई कोल के या कोई भी रिलायबल जो प्लांट्स हैं वो भी आपको साथ साथ जो है ना वो आपको चाहिए होते हैं. तो अगर आप उसकी कॉस्ट भी साथ शामिल कर लें, जो पूरी दुनिया में ऐसे होता है कि जर्मनी में इस वक्त जितनी रिन्यूएबल्स की कैपेसिटी मौजूद है, इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी, उतनी ही इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी उनकी कन्वेंशनल सोर्सेज की भी मौजूद है, क्योंकि जब विंड सोलर नहीं होगा तो आप क्या करेंगे, तो साथ साथ आपको वो भी अपने ग्रो करने पड़ते हैं. सेकेंडली हमारे कंट्री में कोल का आई हैव हर्ड मेनी वेबिनार्स के बहुत होता है. जी मेरी बात सुने कि सारी दुनिया ने कोल्स के अपने अपने लोकल कोल से फायदा उठाया है. पूरी इंडिया से लेके चाइना, यूएसए, सब लोगों ने इसका फायदा उठाया है, और जब आज उनका कोल खत्म होने पे आ गया है तो अब वो रिन्यूएबल्स की तरफ गए. और हम अभी जब कोल, ये जो दुनिया में ग्लोबल वार्मिंग हुई, ये पाकिस्तान ने तो नहीं किया. अब हम अपना कोल जब लगाने लगे हैं, कोल के प्लांट्स हमारा इंडिजिनस एक सोर्स है जिसपे हमें हमारे एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी भी इंश्योर होती है. जब हम वो कोल, अभी तो सिर्फ हमने एक प्लान किया IGCP के अंदर, और उस पर इतना सारे एनवायरमेंटलिस्ट आ गए हैं कि जनाब पता नहीं क्या हो जाएगा, कोल लग जाएगा. तो ये जो जितना ग्लोबल वार्मिंग है ये पाकिस्तान ने की है, ये हमने नहीं की है. तो हम किस बात के हम मुजरिम हैं और हम कोल इस्तेमाल ना करें? हम क्यों ना अपना कोल हम इस्तेमाल करें? और जिस तरह से हम कह रहे हैं कि सोलर विंड की टेक्नोलॉजी आ जाएगी और वो सस्ता हो जाएगा, तो ऐसे ही कोल क्लीनिंग टेक्नोलॉजीज भी पूरी दुनिया में ग्रो कर रही हैं, वो पाकिस्तान में भी आ जाएंगी। तो हमारे इंडिजिनस सोर्स की अपनी एक वैल्यू है, एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी की अपनी एक वर्थ है। सो
जी तो मैं इसका जवाब देना चाहूंगा।
One at a time.
मैं इसका जवाब देना चाहूंगा।
I'll call you in, Amjad sir. Amir Durrani, go ahead.
So thank you very much. I wanted to emulate Armina by saying मुझे जल्दी जाना है, तो let me speak. So I'm finally going to do that. ठीक है, if you allow me. दूसरी बात ये है कि I welcome Adil here. It's always good, having him here. And Adil, don't speak about coal. Let me open the comments and answers very quickly, the 5 I want to give, by explaining to the gentleman from wherever, NTDC, etc., saying that, please go back to Adil's example on mobile phone versus landline. So, I mean, if that is the choice, then actually we should never allow mobile phone to come to Pakistan. But I don't want to waste time on basically an inconsequential.
We are going to get there.
No, but sir, it's an inconsequential question. So I think let's keep it to innovations and how we are. So I will answer, Nadeem Saab, your questions, we versus me. So basically, you see, look at what we are trying to do here. The first problem with we versus me in Pakistan is that basically, even in a stupid country, well, not stupid, but let's put it the poorest country, you and I went there in 2014, not needing nets. Everything the policy made goes to the legislature, no matter how rigged the legislature is. Pakistan is the only country where I see technology policies being done at a cabinet level. And once they have the PM nod, the famous question, the PM nod, there is no debate either through a referendum or through something, at the legislative level. Everything is kept between a few minds, and that's really where the we-me dilemma starts. And I think on the question of markets versus, and I think I'm neither Boston, neither Chicago school, I'm a very lowly Texas Longhorn graduate. So I will just say, for me, the question of markets versus the organized stuff is really in having organized chaos. What we mean here is that basically I find all your debate about saying, should we let everything get dirty? Should we pay all the right price? I think that's not it. And let me give you an example on this. You said, Amir, what do you mean by access? Should government be giving cheap electricity to everybody, no matter whether they live in the boonies or not? No, sir. The definition of access today is not the traditional provision to all. It really means having policies to ensure affordability and sustainability. That is very different from saying it is my right to ask the government sitting in the middle of Chitral to have electricity. Okay. I think the other thing on basically what you had asked about, I think we are all confusing in the same realm this question about public goods and private goods. And I think Irmina called it commodities. I think the question of public and private goods does not exist anymore. World Bank itself and all the Bretton Woods institutions have befuddled it since they started paying for public toilets, right? I mean, so the question is, you can either do that. But let me just actually conclude here that, everybody is really, again, talking about immediacy. Let me tell you, Nadeem Saab, the entire point of my presentation, innovation, was simply to say that this whole discussion on immediate futures is befuddling and confounding future thought on energy. Really, that's the bottom line. Irmina leaves by saying, "Kal hum ye transmission theek kar lenge aur hamare paas products hain." I have been hearing this, if Rashid Aziz was here, for at least the last 21 years. Right? SHAHID SATTAR will vouch for this. I mean, what the hell? All I'm saying is, for once, let there be a sunk cost analysis on killing all that we have and having an open debate about really doing the paradigm shift to something new. Otherwise, this conflict-ridden and incestuous debate where we invite the consumers, producers who are basically incest-oriented, we always call the IPPs, and sorry, Shahid, Aptama and all those. I mean, no, let's have a public debate around this and calculate that if today we let the power sector debt run amok and we basically say we are not going to pay this, what is going to happen? And let's not ask the donors for this funds. Let's do this math internally in our assemblies through a referendum. Thank you, sir.
Good point, Omer. Good point. Go ahead, Ji. Acha ji, Amjad Saab, let Amjad Saab go first.
I appreciate the question of Adil Saab. Adil has rightly pointed out that solar and winds are not cheap anywhere and also in Pakistan. So मैं आपको ये बताऊं कि the early projects were at the 14 cents, 15 cents solar and wind, but now the latest tariff are 5 cents and below 5 cents. So solar is also, I think the lowest right now, below 5 cents per kilowatt hour, and same is the case of the wind. जो सवाल तौसीफ साहब ने रेज किया, I appreciate these questions because these questions are the common misperception about the renewable energy. Okay, go for the coal, go for the indigenous coal and take a share of 20% of the electricity mix right now. Do it. Renewable is not competing with this right now. The renewables anticipated target for Pakistan is 30% by 2030. That is not going to be achieved. But the target is already 30%. For next 70%, you go for the hydro, you go for the coal. Who is stopping you? But not the imported fuel, because with the imported fuel, you don't have control on the prices. We had LNG experience in this country. At the initial start time, the LNG prices and the parts of it, the fuel price was very low, but subsequently it snowballed, and now tariffs are unaffordable, continuously being unaffordable. तो ये चीजें ध्यान में रखनी चाहिए कि आप जब फ्यूल की तरफ जाते हैं तो वहां पे आपको कैपेसिटी पेमेंट का इशू होता है जो रिन्यूएबल में नहीं है. आप अगर कोल की तरफ जाते हैं तो वहां पे प्राइस कंट्रोल, यू डोंट हैव प्राइस कंट्रोल, तो आप उसको पास थ्रू आइटम है, आप उसमें चले जाएंगे. तो रिन्यूएबल्स एक्चुअली कॉम्पीट नहीं कर रहे कोल से, जो आप समझ रहे हैं. We are struggling for at least a minimum share of 30% when we have a resource potential higher than Germany and Denmark, and they are going for 80% share in the electricity mix. They are not mad. वो पागल नहीं है वो ऐसा करें. तीसरी चीज जो बताई गई कि जी स्पिनिंग रिजर्व चाहिए होता है, तो मैं थोड़ी सी चीजें करेक्ट करूंगा. इस पे एक स्टडी हो चुकी हुई है और मेरे ख्याल 4 साल 5 साल पहले की स्टडी हुई थी जिसमें 5000 मेगावाट के रिन्यूएबल को रन करने के लिए यू जस्ट नीड स्पिनिंग रिजर्व ऑफ 400 मेगावाट. और आपको कौन सा सोर्स चाहिए? आपके पास गैस चाहिए, आपको हाइड्रो चाहिए एज ए स्पिनिंग रिजर्व, जो आपके पास ऑलरेडी है, लेकिन उस हिसाब से इतना रिन्यूएबल आपके पास होना चाहिए, वो रिन्यूएबल आपके पास नहीं है. और ये चीजें, ये कंफ्यूजन यहाँ पे दूर होनी चाहिए कि जो प्राइसिंग फिनोमेना है, देयर इज मोर stability in terms of the prices of renewables in future than the coal and the thermal projects. So these misperception I think we should eradicate from our mind. And जब दुनिया एक तरफ जा रही है, $2.7 trillion इन्वेस्ट कर चुकी है पिछले 10 साल में, हम अभी भी कह रहे हैं, ये सोच रहे हैं कि रिन्यूएबल चाहिए या नहीं चाहिए. ये सवाल जरा इसको करेक्ट करना चाहिए. थैंक यू.
Thank you, Ji. But I think, quite frankly, it's not a question of renewable or not. Innovation की बात हो रही है. Innovation lies, for example, मुझे बताएं, बड़ी सिंपल बात है. आप जब शहर फैला रहे हैं, आप जब शहर 100 200 मील के शहर बना रहे हैं, आपकी एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी हो ही नहीं सकती. लोगों ने गाड़ियों में फिरना है, लोगों ने मोहल्लों में रहना है, लोगों ने मोहल्लों में एयर कंडीशनर जाया करना है, लोगों ने जनाब, तो डिमांड तो ऐसे ऊपर जा रही है कि समझ ही नहीं आ रही. जो मर्जी आप कर लें, आपकी डिमांड जब तक अपना रहना सहना आप ठीक नहीं करेंगे, जब तक अपना तरीकेकार ठीक नहीं करेंगे डिमांड का, वी आर वेस्टफुल ऑफ एनर्जी. ऑल आवर कार्स, आई हैव अ होंडा इन लाहौर एंड आई हैव अ कार हियर, and I can tell you the difference in energy is huge because we have invested in energy poor cars. तो प्लीज ये ना सोचे कि सिर्फ वही है. आदिल की बात बड़ी अच्छी थी. I like the Adil Najam, and it's not a Chicago analysis. I point out again, it's a Boston analysis. Shahid Saab, Adil is absolutely right. Our energy is too bloody cheap. When I go to my friends' houses, they have two air conditioners in the bloody living rooms, right? They waste gas. What the hell is happening here? Should the energy price not be 25-30 rupees per unit?
It already is, Dr. Saab. I mean, I don't know whether why you're not current on that. I mean, you paid a bill of 70,000 rupees recently.
I know. I don't think it is 25 rupees.
Adil Saab said very rightly that why is the cost of power in Pakistan, these projects, so high as compared to other countries? There must be something in there. Adil Saab, first of all, I mean, the coal plants, for example, the Sahiwal plant, we've got at roughly 9 cents when the entire world was doing 6 cents. Similarly, every technology that we have inducted and we have, where the state has played a role in some form or the other, has been priced at least 50 to 100% over and above the world market. So, I mean, put 2 and 2 together and make your own conclusions. As far as new why we are inefficient in our housing and in our cities and so on, is fundamentally the same question that you've always raised, Dr. Saab. We need to move up rather than sideways. And as we had calculated when we were in the Planning Commission, cities that are vertically dense are 40% more energy efficient in conversion of energy to GDP. I mean, there is simply no comparison. Look at the commutes involved in going from one place to another. Look at the the houses, the roads, and the infrastructure that's required for these spread out cities. We still haven't learned our lessons, despite even India. I mean, if you go look at the new projects in India, they're all vertical. There are no new bungalows being built there. I don't know why we as a country cannot look at these things. And as far as the availability of double glazing and this and that goes, the double glazing was available in Pakistan 20 years ago, but there were no takers. There still are none. Because your energy is priced so ridiculously.
Okay, ठीक है जी. Let's go on.
Can I answer one of the questions?
जी, go ahead. Go
okay,
ahead.
so I would just touch upon the EV policy question that you raised. I think the biggest motivation behind bringing EVs was to control the transportation sector's carbon emissions and getting to charge your cars from the grid and then driving those cars. So, I mean, there was a point in time in China, like driving an electric vehicle was more polluting than driving a vehicle with a diesel engine, because most of their electricity was being generated from coal. So as far as Pakistan is concerned, so there are a few things that we need to look into when we talk about the energy policy, EV policy. And one of the things is fixing our generation mix. And obviously the policy, I believe, if it is there, so there is a process, regulator has to come up with the regulatory framework to follow it up. But I mean, ideally, the policy should not just come from the Ministry of Climate Change. It should be coming from different departments participating and owning it. And we should not be creating a mess. We should be creating a market for it if we ever could. And I think these are the few things that we need to look into when we talk about the EVs.
बट मेरे साथ प्रॉब्लम ये है कि ईवीज में फिर हम वो डोमेस्टिक प्रोडक्शन शुरू कर देंगे, जैसे हमारी होंडाज और टोयोटाज जो कि परसों की टेक्नोलॉजी पे चल रही, कल की भी नहीं, परसों की टेक्नोलॉजी पे चल रही है, यूरो स्टैंडर्ड फ्यूल भी नहीं आ रहा वगैरह वगैरह. ये आप फिर एक तमाशा शुरू कर देंगे कि कोई ना कोई प्लांट लगा लेगा और उसको हम अगले 50 साल प्रोटेक्ट करेंगे. इस वक्त होंडा, फोर्ड सब टेस्ला के साथ कम्पीट नहीं कर सकती. There is inefficient EV technology and good EV technology. Tesla has the best EV technology. If you're going to invest in low-grade EV technology, I submit you're going to entrap us in the rent-seeking policy that has entrapped us in cars too. ये मैं गलत कह रहा हूँ या ये सही है? आपने सोच लिया पॉलिसी में?
ये आप बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं, and I think these are the things that need to be covered in the policy, which are not.
So then we are setting ourselves up for a fall.
That's what I'm saying.
EV policy बनानी है. The best thing is Elon Musk के जाके घुटने पकड़ ले कि भाई आ जा यहाँ, ठीक है, यहाँ से एक्सपोर्ट कर ले, ठीक है. ये ईवी पॉलिसी बनती है. अदरवाइज हम बहुत क्लेवर जब होते हैं ना, या डोनर आके बना देता है, फिर हम बाद में रोते हैं. ठीक है जी. अच्छा, सॉरी, ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं. मेहरोज साहब, थैंक यू वेरी मच. यू माशाल्लाह बीन वेरी काइंड. लेट मी गो टू मिस डॉक्टर सोबिया बेग. डॉक्टर साहिबा, डू यू वांट टू से एनीथिंग? लास्ट वर्ड्स.
I just want to add here that we've been talking about a lot of technologies, and again coming back to innovation and accessibility and affordability. We can go for microgrids, even nanogrids for our rural areas where our distribution cost can go low. and we can create or generate electricity at the point where it is needed in our rural areas and areas where there is no access right now. So this is one more point that I wanted to make. In addition to that, that we need energy and efficiency and conservation. This is something which is actually critical at this point, where energy efficiency measures, we are always very wasteful of energy. And if we apply and adopt some energy and efficiency and conservation measures and add to the cost that we are paying, not only in terms of monetary costs, but environmental costs, our resources, our efforts, depleting our resources. So why don't we go for such small solutions where lights turn on when you enter?
Please give me a defense of the research academics in this country. I submit, again, I'll be a little harsh, deliberately so. I submit our academic sector is very lazy. For the last 12 years, we've had a huge energy crisis, and our academic sector has done nothing about it. There has been no study, no research coming out of our academic sector. Ye hame bataiye kya wajah hai, Dr. Saab, from the academic sector?
Well, I own part of it. I do own the fact that we have been working towards such research goals which do not have practical implications or applications for Pakistan's scenario. This is something which is quite true. I would own the responsibility for that. However, I believe the fact that it's not all our own fault. Again, I would like to point out that synergy hogi between industry, between government, and between academics. Hum academics अकेले अपने lab में बैठ के, even we do not have the labs, if you frankly ask. So we do not need to work alone. Isolation में काम करने का हमें किसी को भी कोई फायदा नहीं है. So that's one point. Again, I would like to make a synergy चाहिए industry के साथ, government के साथ, and academics के साथ. Academics, if approached, I am sure they would be forthcoming in this particular aspect. Thank you.
Good, Jeet. Thank you very much. Anybody else who wants to say from the panel? I'm not going to take any more questions. Anybody from the panel wants to say anything? Fine. Any questions का time होता है जी? You should have raised your hand earlier. इस वक्त तो नहीं. इस वक्त तो panelist का last chance है अगर कुछ कहना है. Shahid साहब, do you want to say anything to sum it up?
The only thing that I can think of is that we need a dialogue on how to deal with the mess that we've landed ourselves into. Because if we don't deal with this, this is an existential problem for Pakistan now. I mean, the overhang from the what we have done over the last 20 years has come to a point where our very existence, economic stability is at stake for the future.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Amjad Saab. And then Mehroz Saab, and then we close. Amjad Saab, go ahead. Amjad Saab. Amjad Awan.
Right. Adil Saab has pointed out regarding prices in electricity or power side in Pakistan are not so high. So let me tell you that on record we have that in terms of the cents and currency tariff in the region we are 30 to 40% higher side. Okay, the electricity is cheap for whom? Okay, in your urban areas or in the rural areas in any territorial jurisdiction, you pay 1,000 or 2,000 rupees to meter reader, and you will be given the cheap electricity. But that cost will be included in losses, and these losses are bulged into the huge sort of mass of circular debt. So right now, I will quote one figure. Previous year, the T&D loss, its cost in Pakistan was around 352 billion. And let me tell you, out of that, 300 billion were already included in the debt. So that's the real problem. The inefficients are enjoying and who are competent, and ultimately the consumer who is paying all this nonsense in this country. So electricity is cheaper for those who actually pay from the other gate, the wrong gate, and who are actually paying electricity expense for them. But now the loss is being integrated in the whole mass of circular debt. That's a huge problem. And now we see the 2 trillion rupees of the loss, the circular debt right now in the country. That's another debt.
Very good. Thank you.
Just like to add one thing, sir. So what is apparent to everyone is the line losses in the electricity sector, which are double those than the average in the world. What is not apparent to everyone is the gas losses in the gas sector, UFG. The UFG is something like 8 to 9 times more than the average of the world. And our UFG in terms of gas losses is worth many, many times that of the electricity losses, but nobody seems to talk about them. And this is a black hole where we currently also now have a 350 billion rupees circular debt in the gas sector. I mean, we just cannot continue energy policies any further the way they were.
Fair point. Adil, did you want to say anything? Adil Najam?
Yeah, thank you. I know that I'm not a panelist, लेकिन since you allow me, I'm very grateful. I do. एक चीज तो कोल पे मैं फिर नहीं जाता, लेकिन मेरे ख्याल में ये कहना कि क्योंकि हमारे पास कोल है हमें यूज करना चाहिए is like saying कि क्योंकि हमारे पास कोरोना है इसलिए मुझे बीमार होना चाहिए. चीज ये अच्छी होती है नहीं होती. I don't think that argument makes much sense, frankly. लेकिन जो interesting बात है, मैंने अभी जो interesting conversation हमने कोई 5 different units of cost of energy यूज की. ठीक है, तो असीफ साहब ने कहा कि जी नेप्रा का टैरिफ ये है. मैं रोज ने बताया कि जी कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन ये है. अमजद साहब ने कहा जी उसकी लॉस ये है. सो इन सम वेज आई थिंक दैट इज वेयर द पॉलिसी कंफ्यूजन इज कि इज इट गोइंग टू बी ड्रिवन बाय नेप्रा जो टैरिफ डिटरमिन करता है, मार्केट जो रियल प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी प्राइस डिटरमिन करती है, और इट इज सच अ मैनेज सिस्टम मेरे ख्याल में इस वक्त कि उस जब जितना ज्यादा आप मैनेज सिस्टम करेंगे उतने ज्यादा उसमें लूप होल्स होंगे, एज मेनी पीपल हैव सेड, टू टेक अवे सम पार्ट. जब आपकी लोड शेडिंग पीक पे थी तो एवरी पाकिस्तानी टर्न इनटू एन एनर्जी प्रोवाइडर. जो अमीर था वो एनर्जी जनरेटर हो गया, उसने जनरेटर लगा दी. जो मिडिल वाला था उसने यूपीएस लेके एनर्जी स्टोरेज बिजनेस में आ गया. जो गरीब था उसने अपनी एनर्जी डिमांड कर्व को चेंज कर दिया because the supply curve had been changed. So what I'm saying is that I think in society there is a lot of energy resilience as well as ability. And on this one, unlike many other things, I think the market needs to be made freer. Policy needs to step back by keeping some safeguards. Lekin over-determination has not served us well in the energy sector.
So Boston reluctantly accepts Chicago.
Okay, reluctant.
Mero, last words to you.
I think it was a really wonderful thing for us to talk about energy innovation at last finally. And I think renewables ke bare mein jis tarah that everybody's talking about, apni jagah khud bana rahe hain. We started from 14 cents, now we are at around 3.5 cents for wind and solar. And with the market opening up in future, with CTBCM competitive trading bilateral contracts market coming up, there's not much that we as people who think we control the electricity sector can do. And the market is going to determine its future by itself. And the cheaper sources, the cheaper methods, the more profitable methods, they are going to make their way in. And there's a lot of hope for renewables. There's a lot of hope for new technology. There's a lot of hope for innovative solutions towards ending what is happening here. So I think we should end it at a good note, thinking and hoping that things are going to fall in place. But we should not stop working on it. We should be working double as hard as we are right now. With I can guarantee one thing from NEPRA's point of view, and from as representative of NEPRA, that we are gathering information right now, and we are very soon going to call all the stakeholders. We are very soon going to call all the universities, all the researchers to come and collaborate with us and work a solution out for whatever we are planning as Pakistan's government, as Pakistan's policies they are dictating us to do. So there are a few good signs, and we need to look at them in a way that we get motivated to do something good for the country as well. And obviously one more thing that nobody's talking about, and there is a need to talk about, is to jack up the demand. Because I mean, just 10 years ago, when you 20 years back, when you used to land in Karachi, it used to be a city of lights. But now when you land, it's like a light here, light there, light here, light there. So people are forced. There is suppressed demand. Discos, they are not giving connections to people. The change in mindset, that the innovation, one of the things that innovation can bring is change in mindset of the distribution companies. That is, I mean, obviously in the market, that would be a lot different with when we have, we'll have suppliers and retailers. So currently at present, when you're giving a connection to a consumer, you're like, okay, मैं तुम्हारी 7 नस्लों पे एहसान कर रहा हूँ. But this thing needs to be changed, and people should be encouraged. It's a business. You're earning money out of it. So you should look at it that way. So that there are a lot of things that we need to work on there, and one of them is the mindset of regulator, mindset of policymakers, mindset of consumers, mindset of generators, and mindset of everybody participating in the sector. So I think that would be it from my side. Yeah, thank you.
Doctor, just one last word, sir.
Go ahead.
How can you have a competitive market if you've tied up all the supply for the next 15 years in long-term contracts with fixed take and pay? I mean, I am totally at a loss to understand how CTBTM or anything can make a difference to that. We cannot have a market unless we break our ties with the past.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a good note to end it. Mehroz Sahib is absolutely gave us a very positive note, and I appreciate that the NEPRA is going to open up, talk to people, try and develop a consensus. I think that's excellent. The regulator should do that. Shahid Sahib is right that if we tie ourselves up into long-term contract, but the central problem is this: we are a transactional people. Go back in history, Jahangir had this famous bell that you rang, and everybody would get justice because you rang the bell. Okay, fair enough. Now, Jahangir, as we know, eventually ended up losing out to the Brits. Why? Because the Brits had research, they had Newton, they had the ability to think through things, they had the ability to develop laws, they had the ability to envision. We are still sitting in a transactional state. Energy is short, run, make something. Oh, now energy is too much, run, do something. Oh, we lost energy. This has to end. That's what all of you are saying. That's what Amir is saying. That's what everybody's saying. Unfortunately, we cannot be a nation because we haven't become one. We are still bickering. Gujranwala to Jalandhar to Islamabad to whatever. There is no central thinking anywhere, neither the political parties nor the army, nor the bureaucracy. Nobody wants to think. Everybody wants to go in a transactional mode. So Mehroz Sahib is right that once somebody gets a connection, it is really a favor from the state. It's still the Jahangiri state. It's not the British or the institutional state that we're looking for, unfortunately. Key thing is, can we get the government to behave itself? I wrote a book, and the central point was, can we get the government? Can we reconfigure the government? I know that's a central problem of development, but unfortunately we can't. Can we go for growth? No, we can't. I'm now convinced that honestly, we as a people don't want growth and development. We are quite comfortable and happy where we are with all our inefficiencies. And you may tell me that we should do this, we should do that. Hey guys, we are the people who sat on PIA. Roosevelt is closing down this October 31st. God knows what's going to happen. Our assets are thrown to the wind all the time. Then we say we are resource poor. We are not resource poor. We are imagination poor. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Great seminar. Really enjoyed it. Inshallah, we'll take up the subject again soon. We won't give it up because it's an important subject. As Shahid Sattar said, it's a lifeline. Thank you. All the best. Khuda Hafiz.